You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome in to this week's episode of From the Chair. Honored to have our guest this week, the Vice President and Director of Athletics at Louisiana Tech, Dr. Eric Wood. E. Wood, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. It's good to be with you today.
Great to have you with me, and I really appreciate you taking the time out. We're going to talk a little bit about career and your work at Louisiana Tech and some of your influences and a couple other things along the way. And I look forward to sharing with others what I already know about you and the kind of person you are. And it'll be indicative over the years ahead of the kind of person you are as you continue to grow there in your job at Louisiana Tech. We talked offline for a few minutes. You obviously your exposure early on to college athletics was as a student athlete, a football player, I believe, if I remember correctly, a DB. And then I know you had a host of opportunities to work at different places as you advanced your academic career and your athletic career. And I may not get them all, and if I don't, you correct me. But if my recollection serves me, it was New Haven and Clemson and Wake and the ACC office and Arkansas. I think you worked at the NCAA office for a little while. And then most recently at the University of Central Florida before coming over to Louisiana Tech. First of all, did I get all that right?
You got all of them right, but we spent so much time rebranding Central Florida as UCF. So that's the only part.
Hey, just a quick aside on that.
All the spots.
I was actually down there in the last couple of weeks, and I actually was talking to this gentleman who was their oldest living student athlete. And he was telling me that it actually at one time was the Florida Tech Citronauts. So
that's right.
I've told people that's a nice little trivia question to have in your back pocket sometime, right? So
that's right. The UCF faithful know that.
Yeah. So hey, look. So you, as again I said, you were a student athlete. I'm curious, somewhere along the way in your student athlete experience or the work that you began and getting your master's and that sort of thing and working on a campus, you made the decision that this was a pathway that you wanted to pursue. And I don't know that you necessarily coming out of the gate had the idea that it would be as a director of athletics. It might have been some other role in athletics. But when did you decide that athletics administration was something that you were interested in and that you wanted to pursue? And further, was there a key influencer in that decision process that as you were kind of, looking at what your career might shape up to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was a Division II student athlete, football student athlete. And I share that because my exposure to Power Five, I didn't have exposure to Power Five institutions. And so while I was a student athlete, and I'll get this number wrong, but I may have saw 5 administrators in our department, and they were also coaches. So our compliance person was our softball coach. Our SID was the tennis coach. Our athletics director was a former coach. And so I thought, the only way you can be involved in athletics is to be a coach. And while it was intriguing to me, I really never had the fire to be a coach, but I wanted to stay around the game. And I thought maybe physical therapy, maybe I could do that and be around the game. And after that anatomy and physiology class, Mike, I quickly changed courses. But I wanted to stay around the game. And I had a mentor, Kim Souza Peoples, who was a dean of students at my institution, but her husband was a former student athlete at South Carolina. And she said, Eric, there's a whole world of athletics administration out there if you don't want to coach, but you'd like to stay around athletics. And so she helped me navigate the space and connected me with some folks at Clemson University. And I pursued a graduate assistantship. And that was my introduction to college athletics. Now, Mike, I'm a New York City boy, and I went down to Clemson, South Carolina for my graduate assistantship, from 8 million people to 12,000. But I'll tell you what, it blew my mind. I mean, just a full athletics department, 79,000 in Death Valley. And I was hooked. I was hooked.
Well, okay. So, look, I was hooked on Clemson one time too, right? I'm a graduate from there, so
Yep.
still have great love and affection for the places. I know you do too. Uh, so I remember when I went back to Clemson as a graduate assistant, the reality was I wanted to get my MBA, and they could have asked me to work in compliance. I could have carried the garbage. I did some. They could have asked me to go
Right.
pick up the mail. I did that some, but I ended up at IPTE for me and was exposed to the external side of the business. My point is, I would have done anything they wanted me to do because I wanted the opportunity to further my education and also work in athletics. What was your role as a graduate assistant, and was it specific to your desires, or was it a pathway towards your master's?
So I definitely was. A few of my mentors said, "Hey, there are just too many opportunities out there for you to pay for a master's degree. There are graduate assistantships, teaching assistantships, and so I was definitely in the mindset of where can I go and get this degree paid for. I come from a single parent home. I was on financial aid, and academic money at Sacred Heart University, and so I'd already had some loans from my undergraduate institution. So I was primarily trying to find a way to find a way to finance my degree. So I wasn't exposed, as I mentioned to you, to a particular area. So very much like you, I went there and I was a graduate assistant in the career center on campus. And I was doing a practicum in Vickery Hall, which you're familiar with, was our academic center at Clemson. And then I was a driver for the women's soccer team for the summer camps. And then I was, Mike, you don't know this about me. I was the mascot for a little while, not the main mascot, but the mascot makes appearances and at birthday parties and parades, and I picked that gig up a little bit to make a little bit of money and get introduced to the athletics department. And so I did a little bit of everything until a graduate assistantship position came open in compliance. And quite honestly, I knew a very surface level what compliance was, because we all have to sign all that paperwork at the beginning of the year. And all of a sudden, I'm doing a graduate assistantship in Clemson, in the compliance office, and learning what that office does, and really getting exposed to all the other departments. So I started off in compliance and did that for a couple of years as a graduate assistantship. And as you mentioned, ended up getting the internship at the NCAA office. And so I was one of 11 selected for the national office. Because of my compliance GA position, they put me in governance. And so I've got some exposure to governance at the NCAA office. And then from there moved on to all of the places that you shared. But I'll tell you what, I enjoyed compliance because I touched every department has to be involved with the compliance office, right? But I also realized I wasn't passionate about it. I wanted to be around the students more directly. And so I tried to move out of compliance, but primarily had been on the internal side for all of my career. And so I learned that that was going to be a difficult path to the AD chair. And so I tried to do some things over the last 5 years to broaden the scope of my responsibilities.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that in just a second. First thing I want to do is put a pin mark in something that I think is important to note for those who maybe are looking at their track, and maybe some, if there's some folks that are in college listening to this, or some younger staff members listening to this, or anywhere along the pathway. Candidly, I think one of the key takeaways here is, get the opportunity and then
Right.
go in and bust it and do your job the best you can do. I've always believed in you serve and you do whatever role you're in currently, you do the best you can at that job. And if you will do that, people will notice, right? And you're proof of that, not only in your continued ascension within different departments, but then ultimately getting the chance to sort of hone in and expand on some other resume skills that probably you find to be helpful today in your job at Louisiana Tech. And so it's there that I want to riff off of your last statement for just a second. You said that you've got some other opportunities, and you and I've had, I don't think you'd mind me sharing, you and I've had personal conversations through the years about how do you expand upon your job responsibilities to make sure you get full recognition for your capabilities, right? Since historically speaking anyway, there are these waves, and there was a wave at one time where, man, you got to have fundraising experience. You got to have external revenue generation experience. And fair or unfair, that just seemed to be the way the day was playing out, right? And
That's right.
so you and I talked about it's how you get exposure to those other things and then articulate that story from that exposure to other things in such a way that those who are looking at you as a possible hire see that you have that capacity. I remember one time going through an interview, and my athletic director, Doug Dickey, at the time was very supportive of my career, and he wanted me to have the opportunity to be an AD. And I came back for this interview, and he said, so how was it? And I said, well, they dinged me on the fact that I didn't have direct sports administration experience, and that I was not a senior associate athletic director. And he said, all right, you're over baseball and you're over basketball, and I'm giving you these other responsibilities, and you're now a senior associate AD. Now, thank goodness I had someone that cared about my career
That's right.
at that level, right? But my point is, there are ways eventually to get the exposure you need. I'm curious. You've obviously, I don't know if it was Danny, I don't know if it was others who said, "Hey, I see something in this guy, and he's telling me that he has a desire to learn these other things." And you've already alluded to it, that those things happen. What were they?
So Mike, this is, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have, this is year 23 for me in the business, since I graduated from Sacred Heart in 1998. Hopefully that math is right for your viewers. I was, but I have friends that have come up the external route, friends that have come up the internal route in student services, and it's just so funny how my external and development friends are trying to get sport administration because they've had all the external stuff, right? And then those of us that came up the internal route, and including student services, are all trying to get the fundraising to speak to the weaker part of our skill sets. And this job, Mike, this AD job was the first interview where I was completely myself. Okay. Now, I had been intentional over the last 5 years, but I've said it in other venues. I've always tried to oversell my weaknesses. The areas where I knew, I thought that the interviewer wanted to hear, that president, that board of trustees member. And so you spend so much time trying to do the other part. You nailed it. While I was at Wake Forest and I was the compliance guy, I just tried to, or one of the compliance guys, I just tried to do that job really well. But then Ron Wellman and said, "Hey, let's get him involved in some Deacon Club events. Let's have him speak at this event, or just this guy's really, he's an extrovert. Let's get him involved." And so, they just start noticing you. But to your point, you've got to do your job really well, for them to say, what else can we give that person, right? But to go back to the question, Danny, when it was time to leave Arkansas, I'd been at Arkansas for seven years. There were folks in front of me that weren't going anywhere, and it was just, I just felt like it was that time for change. And I got a call from Danny White, who had just taken the job at UCF. And in our conversation, he said, I want to hire people that want to be ADs. Whether they become ADs or not, I want to hire them to be ADs. And so that was intriguing enough to me. And he knew that somebody that come up from the internal route, he said, "Hey, I want to make you a sport administrator. I'm going to put you over some areas that you don't have experience in it." So all of a sudden I'm overseeing strength and conditioning, and, just overseeing different units. And over my 5 years there with Danny, he allowed me to host some donors on a foreign tour for men's basketball. I was the sport administrator for men's basketball. He put me over our Varsity Nights Club, which was our Letterman's Association. It gives me an opportunity to work with alums and increase membership, and just deal with some of our donors that are also former student athletes. And so he gave me that experience. He put me over our convocation center, which was our revenue generation part. Right. So he knew that my ultimate goal, just like your AD did, my ultimate goal was to be an athletics director. And I couldn't speak to some of those experiences or skill sets in interviews. And so he really was instrumental in letting me spread my wings. But he would also remind me, I need you to make sure that the areas you have right now are operating at an extremely high level for what we're trying to accomplish here. But he was very intentional about that. And interviewed for one or two AD jobs that I didn't get. But as I started this statement off with, when I interviewed for Louisiana Tech, it was the first time I didn't embellish on any of my skill sets. This is who I am. If this works for you at this time, then let's do this. And it worked. It was the first time that I felt extremely authentic and transparent about who I was, what I bring to the table. And I'm just grateful that it worked. It's great timing.
I think the authenticity piece of that is really critical. For a while I was doing some work with an agent, helping them with their coach clients to prepare them for job interviews and their next step to move from coordinators to head coaches. And one of the things that I always harped on when I talked to the coaches was that, yeah, you can go in and sell as you do in the recruiting process in these meetings with the president and the board or whomever is making the hire. But at the end of the day, if you get the job, is that who you are? And if you told them who you are, and I believe that the greatest chance for success was to be authentic in the process. If you are who you are and you believe in yourself and you believe in your skill set and your values and your code of ethics and all those kinds of things, if that's the forward facing side of your personality and your resume, if you will, that you show in an interview process, I think you get out of the gates in a much stronger way. Is if you're an AD or a new assistant AD or a coach or whatever, the authenticity will ultimately play out. And I also buy into Danny's theory about it's good to have, you got to have a variety of folks to make everything work, right? But I do believe it's good to have folks who want to be an athletic director, who aspire to be, and they may not all aspire to be an AD at the Power 5 level or even at Division 1. Right. I think we've got 12 that were on my staff at Tennessee that are now athletic directors, and they're across all divisions, Division 2, Division 3, FCS, FBS, but they all had something in them. They all had this leadership ability. And so the lesson that we in leadership need to learn, much to your description of Danny sort of giving you some other opportunities there, I think it's that you hire the right kind of people that have the right kind of code of ethics and core values, and then utilize their talents and skills in such a way that they help you do your job, but also it empowers them to learn new things. And so I think that's really good feedback, Eric. I want to you mentioned the board, and you also mentioned your time at Sacred Heart, and to tie those two things together, you are a Board of Trustees member at Sacred Heart. I'm assuming your term is still in play. I don't know, but I'm curious. This is a question I don't get to ask because I'm not aware off the top of my head any other athletic director who is a Board of Trustees member at an institution, and so having now you're serving as a vice president of an institution, you're the director of athletics at an institution, you're on a board of trustees at your alma mater. What have you been able to bring to Sacred Heart that is informative to them from your current roles, but then vice versa also, what have you taken from serving as a board of trustee member at a university and seeing some of the sausage factory there? How has that made you a better AD at your current institution? So two different approaches to that question.
Yeah, certainly a full circle experience, Mike. I was, full transparency. I was a kid with a 770 SAT, but a 3.2 GPA, right? A true benefactor of the sliding scale for student athletes. And Sacred Heart took a chance on me as a kid from the Bronx in New York City, gave me a chance to go. And I'm telling you, I fully, wholeheartedly believe that opportunity to experience higher education as a first generation student has changed my life and the future for my 4 children. And I firmly believe that. And so when I say it's full circle, an institution that took a chance on me, gave me a chance to obtain a degree, and then come full circle 20 plus years later to be asked to serve on the board was probably the most significant professional I don't know if it's an accomplishment or an opportunity to serve that I've experienced. I mean, it was really emotional, and I take it very seriously. To answer the first part of this, what I bring to the table is that I've been on 6 different campuses. I've been on a Division 2 campus. I've been at a Power 6 campus. I've been in the Group of 5 at here at Louisiana Tech. I've been in the ACC. I've been in the SEC, and so I just bring a perspective of private, public, Power 5, Group of 5, conference office, national office. I bring a variety of those experiences to Sacred Heart. And having been removed from campus for 20 years from that campus, it gives me a sense of fresh eyes. You're always nervous about working at your alma mater or serving in this capacity because now you see what's behind the scenes. But I'm also able to draw on experiences from those different campuses, and I bring that to Sacred Heart. This is the first time the athletics director role at Louisiana Tech has had a VP designation. I think serving as a VP here helps me on the board of trustees because I get to see the role athletics plays, but just I get to see the big picture of what it takes to move an entire university forward. The partnerships locally and interdisciplinary within the colleges. I get to see the fundraising side, the philanthropy side, the participation and connections with the federal government, and why universities exist, and serving those local areas. And so, yeah, I've had the opportunity to bring the experiences from these different campuses to Sacred Heart, but then just a level of professionalism and the way Sacred Heart does business at that board level with all of these local businessmen and women who are trying to position Sacred Heart to be the best it could be, but continue to serve its mission. So different missions from Sacred Heart is from where I currently serve and some of the other places, but it's just been I think a mutually beneficial opportunity, and so I can bring a lot of those things to Dr. Geis and his leadership here at Louisiana Tech.
Well, it's unique. It's a unique story to be certain, right? And I think it's an interesting story, and I'm sure you'll continue to learn through that process as you develop in your role. But also, I know for sure you'll provide key insights back the other way to Sacred Heart, and hopefully, to your university administration there at Louisiana Tech as well. Let's flip to Louisiana Tech for just a second, or for a
Okay.
few minutes rather. So you're first time AD. You come in during a freak time, right? Pandemic, and
Can't believe it.
and so you've got the pandemic, you've got the portal, you got NIL, you've got a coaching change, you've got new facilities coming online because of the effects of the hurricane a few years ago. A lot being thrown at you, pretty quickly. Let me start, and this may be almost comical to ask you this, but how has it been different from what you thought it was going to be based upon all the things? Or, I mean, you can anticipate what becoming an athletic director is like, and then you're in it, and it's just never the same as what you thought it was going to be. And then you throw all these other things on the pile, right? So, talk me through that.
Yeah, ironically, last week, probably in one of my breakdowns, Mike, where I was like, I need to talk to somebody who's sitting in the chair. I called a colleague to remain unnamed right now, and he said, Eric, we came in. We missed the glory years of being an athletics director, right? We are
Were there
right in the
glory
middle of
years? I'm just asking now.
it. It just seemed like it. To your
Yeah.
point, I walked in, first day on the job, we had a personnel issue, you know. Second day, well, really second day in the office, COVID strikes, we were in the middle of it anyway, but we lose back-to-back home football games. And all of a sudden I'm trying to reschedule games with ADs that I don't know in the state, and how things even work. I GPS from the office from the home, from my house to the office, because I took that AD job sight unseen. I interviewed at a separate location, and it was all confidential and hush hush. And so I had not even seen, the city or the facility. So you're right. NIL, social justice. Our women's basketball team decided to remain in the locker room for the national anthem. I'm working through that as a first time AD, as the first African American AD in Ruston, Louisiana. Just working through NIL, social justice, COVID expenses, and testing, and just managing all of that. It was, I kept saying to myself, keep showing up, put one foot in front of the other, make the next best decision you can make with the information you have. And it was stressful, Mike. I mean, somewhat tongue in cheek, but I called Shane Lyons up and I said, I think I'm ready to go back to being a deputy.
Yeah. Right.
I think I'm
Yeah.
ready to just be the number two guy somewhere, but a year later, I guess I'm 14 months in now, and it's still, as crazy as it is just still my life's passion, my life's work. I mean, and so that's what, even in the midst of chaos and constitution change and figuring out how Louisiana Tech can survive in an NIL world, is just still a passion of mine, and it keeps me up at night. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still nervous. I still want to do the best I can for our student athletes and our coaches, and make our president look good for hiring me. A lot of pressure I put on myself, but it's been extremely difficult. But there have been some extreme highs as well. we got to host a regional for the first time, Mike, for a baseball regional. We won the West Division. We in men's basketball got Coach of the Year. I mean, we've done some great things, and so I've experienced some highs already and some extreme lows. But it's still my life's passion, and I'm enjoying it.
Well, it's like, when you're lifting weights, right? You kind of tear yourself down and build yourself back up, and you're gaining through scar tissue and building of your muscles. You're gaining the wherewithal to do what's going to be ahead of you, and certainly it's been it's been like dog years the last 2 years. I told somebody the other day, they asked me how old I was, and I said 56, and I walked away and I got down the sidewalk and I was like, wait, I'm 58, and I just buried these last 2 years, right? And
Yeah.
so
And
it's
I left out conference realignment, Mike. Conference
yes,
realignment,
you did,
coaching
you did.
change. I had a donor tell me, he just said, Eric, congratulations. You can thank Louisiana Tech for giving you 20 years of experience in your first year as an AD. One of our
Unbelievable.
donors shared that with me.
Unbelievable. So I'll make one comment, and then I want to ask you about a couple of those specific things. One is, when you talk about the times of crisis, I just, for whatever it's worth, I found that what worked best for me whenever I got into that mode where you're having to make a tough call, or you're wondering what you're doing right or why you're still doing it or whatever, I would go to practice.
Oh,
and
good
and
call.
and you know what I mean. Go sit in the stands of basketball, watch practice. Go out on the field, watch the guys practice football. Go out and watch them hit tennis balls, whatever. I go to practice, and then that gets you recentered and refocused pretty quickly, because
Oh, well
it.
said. Well said. And you're right.
Yeah,
That does. It
yeah.
really does help. I try to take one road trip with every team, try to get out to practice, once a week. And so, no, I appreciate that. And the little that I have done in that area has been helpful.
So one thing I picked up on in a little bit of, I do a little bit of background research that may surprise you. Uh, you guys have had phenomenal fundraising success in the last couple of years, in the face of a pandemic. I mean, like, significant success in terms of growth of your number of donors and also the dollars provided. So maybe you're just a phenomenal fundraising AD and you didn't know it all along, right? Now, I mean, what? So what do you attribute that to? I am very intrigued, actually, during a really interesting time in our world. On a percentage basis, the success you guys have had is significant.
Yeah, I would thank you for sharing that, Mike, because it is, again, speaking back to, you when you're an internal guy, you want to prove that you can be a fundraiser because you think that's what everybody's looking for, and I'm sure every president does, right? Institutional budgets are already tapped and strained, and so they want somebody that can come in and generate new revenue streams. I want to be completely honest with you. My move to UCF was to go work for one of the best fundraisers in America, and that was Danny White, right? I mean, there were other opportunities to be a sport administrator. Yes, I have some family in Florida. Those were all ancillary reasons for leaving an SEC school to go to UCF at the time. I knew that I could pick up some things from working for that guy that's got a completely different skill set from me. And so over the last 5 years, Mike, had a chance to watch. We took over an 0-12 program, went 6-6 in football in that first year, and then 13-0, beating Auburn in the Peach Bowl, and then 12-1, I think, losing in the Fiesta Bowl. But all that, I got to watch how we branded UCF. I got to watch how we stewarded and cultivated our donors. And I'll tell you what, in that 5 seasons there, I tried to carry all of that, not being at a Power 5 school, maybe not having a schedule that all your fans want to see these top schools coming to play you and home and homes. And I took all of that and brought that and said, let me see what works here at Louisiana Tech. And so we've got a great VP for advancement in Brooks Hall on campus. And we had some great folks already in our fundraising unit, but we had a, coming out of a COVID year, we had an increase in donors. We had a 60% increase in giving. It was our second largest fundraising year in an annual fund. And it was sharing a vision and then being authentic and developing relationships and trying to match people's passions with their giving, and just being honest and transparent about that, not just paying attention to our top donors, but really trying to cultivate those that are at the lower end of that as well, for them to feel encouraged, for them to want to give more. But what I learned in this last year is that people want a vision. And that was one of the things that I watched, and what we did at UCF was to clearly articulate a vision, and then build relationships, meet people where they are. And it resulted in some great, a great fundraising year. Now, we had a tough football schedule this year, but we're beg, borrowing, and stealing ideas just like everybody else. And so,
Yeah.
it's been fun to have the background that I have, and then watch our team, have some successful fundraising, successful fundraising year.
Yeah. The three most critical pieces of success and development in the athletics space: one, you've got to have passionate, investors, and fans, by their very nature, are passionate about your product, right? The second
Right.
thing is, I do believe you have to have a vision and tell people what that vision is and articulate it in a way that is clear cut. And the third thing is you have to ask. and
Yep.
and so many times in athletics was historically known in fundraising in many circles for transactional based asks. And then major gift fundraising developed, and that's become, there's been some that has grown through the years in terms of being more rich and understanding of how you're supposed to go about that. But I do think if you will articulate a vision, people will come alongside that. And so it's good to hear that you feel like that was the genesis of the growth that y'all have had in the last couple of years. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to another year, right? We have a new coach, and we've got an opportunity to jump on that here. And we're looking to launch a major giving society, which have been very common, over the last couple of years. But Louisiana Tech has not had one, and so moving the fan base from this transactional thinking to this philanthropic thinking, this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so two more questions, and then
Yep.
I'll ask you just a short couple things about your family, and we'll let you get on with your business of being an athletic director.
Yep.
The first is you've had to make a coaching change in football, and you hired Sonny, and probably good in it. I'm sure you were beaming to see him on the sidelines in the bowl game, finishing up as a one game coach for Texas Tech, and the success that they had in that game. And now he's in Ruston the next morning and hitting the ground running, right? So what were you looking for there, and what did you see in Sonny that made you believe that he's the guy for you guys?
Yeah, fortunately, I had been a part of 9 head coaching hires over my career before getting into this position, and so Louisiana Tech, first of all, has a great history. So we're working with a great product as it relates to football and the success that has been had here over the years, and the coaches that have come through. Let me take a step back, Mike, and I appreciate you giving me some liberty here. Making the coaching change to begin with I had a pit in my stomach because of the relationship with our previous coach, and so it made it very, very difficult coming off of conference realignment. So it's been the hardest thing that I've had to do amongst all the aforementioned issues that we've encountered in our first year, because I realize you're dealing with people, you're dealing with families, right? You're dealing with not just the head coach, but 10 assistants and ops folks and recruiting and graphics and all the nutrition and all those folks, right? Strength coaches and their families. So, I didn't take it lightly. And so it was very difficult. Moving on to the fun side of that was just taking what I had learned over the last several years in these head coaching hires. Number one, looking for somebody that's they either competed themselves at a high level, or they experienced some success in their athletics career. It doesn't always have to be, right? Sonny was a walk-on quarterback at Texas Tech, had scholarship offers to Abilene Christian, but was a walk-on at Texas Tech intentionally because he wanted to learn the air raid system from Mike Leach. And eventually, by his senior year, led the country in passing and touchdowns, and beats Aaron Rodgers in a final bowl game to end his career and have the most passing yardage in the country, right? So he experienced some success, but he had a hard hat mentality to it, right? I'm looking for somebody, and I was looking for somebody that could be a CEO of a program. Now, he only had about 5 or 6 weeks of sitting in that interim head coaching chair at Texas Tech. And so, but it did set him apart a little bit from some others where this would have been the very first time. So him having to rally, when the team their head coach was let go at 5-2, 5-3, him having to not only rally the student athletes, but rally his colleagues when he's named interim head coach, to turn around and win the program's first bowl game since 2013. We just knew we saw that, and we thought, these kids are playing hard for them when he's really a lame duck coach, as are the other coaches. So the fact that we saw him rally these kids and almost beat Baylor on the road and beat Iowa State was just impressive, and we're looking for somebody that had been at the coordinator level, actually call some plays, offense or defense. A lot of people have the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator title, but they don't call plays. I wanted somebody that felt that pressure and also had to manage a side of the ball, and not just, manage themselves in a GA. I wanted somebody that had to manage that side of the ball. So, and really, this was the first thing, but I wanted to talk football then. I wanted somebody that was a leader of young men. And I know that's cliche and probably a little corny, but I wanted somebody that cared about them as people. And, all of the feedback and references that we have were that he was a great dude. He was a believer, and he was a great offensive coordinator. And so, at the end of the day, we got our first round draft pick. And now my job is I learned over the years, is to get in the trenches and do everything I can to eliminate the barriers to him being successful.
That's a great story. Great story. All right. So final question. I know you well enough to know that you have a love of your family, and you have a beautiful family with 4 young children, beautiful wife. Now you're in this role where you're getting tugged at from a million different directions. What's your commitment to trying to make sure that you balance all of that and make sure that you're still, giving your kids both quality and quantity time as an athletic director?
Yeah, it has been very difficult, but it's been difficult over the last, uh, 15 years we've been together, right? So but this, my wife is fully supportive of me pursuing this job, and she knew that this first year was going to be probably the toughest year, just being new to it, and then all that we were encountering. So Chrissy Rowalk, if I say her name correctly, the AD at Delaware, she mentioned that there's it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just really cool. I learned that from her on one of these panels and webinars that we all take part in. And the best thing I can do is include them. I took my daughter on a women's basketball road trip. Number one, I want her to be around these role models, but it's an opportunity to spend time with daddy on the bus, in the hotel, at shoot around. And I get it's family time, but I'm working at the same time. I get them over to every home game where they don't have something going on, their own sports or their own activities. I want them to be there because I want our coaches and our student athletes to see it, but I also get to spend time with them. So I've just tried to find ways where they can come to the office, or I can run home in between events. Try to live within 15 minutes of campus for that, and that's just the only way I've been able to try to do my main job, which is husband and daddy. Try to do that as best I can, and so I'm really trying to live by Chrissy's mantra of work-life integration.
I think that's spot on, man. And we are in careers where families can be a part of it, right? And
Right.
it's something, it's great for kids to grow up around it. So I think you've got the right perspective there on that, to be certain. And I know you well enough to know that it goes beyond that with you in terms of your feeling about your family. But hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time out today to visit with me. I think you've provided some great perspective for folks that'll enjoy listening to, not only what you've been through in your career, but what you're doing now. And just know that I appreciate your friendship, and I want to thank you for joining me.
Mike, this time meant a lot to me, and I listened to a lot of these as I was coming up in the business, and you pick and choose things from different people that help you grow. And I hope I shared something today that helps somebody get to where they want to be. But more importantly, good to spend time with you, sir. You've always been helpful to me in my career. So thank you.
Always, man. So this has been E. Wood, Dr. Eric Wood, the Vice President and Director of Athletics at Louisiana Tech University. And I'm your host on From the Chair, Mike Hamilton. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.